So, good morning, everyone from sunny Madrid, and thank you for joining this webinar on the topic consumer spending habits in the UK during this COVID-19 pandemic. My name is Alejandra Lanzadi, and I am Data Partnerships Manager at CARTO, and Clifford is joining me today.
Hello, I'm Clifford. I'm the founder and CEO of Doorda.
So let's go straight into the topic. So under an EY study, 4 consumer behavior trends have emerged during the COVID-19 pandemic, and they have segmented these consumers into 4 different segments. So 27.3% of those consumers are in the cut deep group, which is a segment that is spending less across all expense categories. Another segment is the stay calm and carry on, which is 26.2%. These consumers are continuing to spend as normal as they consumed previously to the situation. 35.1 consumers are in the save and stockpile. So this is the majority of consumers. So they are they feel pessimistic about the future. They are purchasing things that they consider important, and they're stocking them in case the shops run out of them. And last, 11.4%, which is the smallest group, is hibernate and spend. So this segment are spending more across all consumer spending categories. So they took this opportunity to spend even more than before. So the good news is that location data is everywhere. So we can track these consumers, and we can analyze where they are spending more, in what areas, and in what categories as well. So we can trace consumer habits. So this is very good news. And after this big statement, we want to start with a poll. So please answer in your in the space allowed in your screen to the following question. In the current situation, what data sources are you using to make your analysis? Great. So thank you for your answers. So we can see that most of you use open source data. The second would be a combination of the above. Third one would be internal or company generated data. And last, third-party premium data, which is great because we will be talking about this last one. We know sometimes it is difficult to find the right data for your local area. So that is very good news as we want to introduce you to Doorda, who's one of our latest data partners at CARTO. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, good afternoon, everyone. So what Doorda does is we identified the risk quite a while ago where a lot of data analysts and data scientists, quite expensive, highly talented people, were spending a lot of their time going to individual websites, downloading spreadsheets and CSV files, and spending a lot of time doing small little bits of analysis on quite useful data. Us as a business realized that was quite a lot of wasted time and energy because that data was rarely updated and they rarely knew the best sources for the best data. So as a business, what Doorda does, we actually track all the public data sources. So in the UK, that's 968. That would include Food Standards Agency, hygiene inspections, could be price paid data from the Land Registry, or could just be general information from the Home Office and the Cabinet Office. We then harvest all these data sources and validate them against known recognized registers. So in the case of any address information we get, which could be from Land Registry, we would then match that against Royal Mail. So you've got a standard data set that you can compare data and have a shared ID. If it's a company name, then we would match that company name back to the company's house register. So again, you've got a single reference point. Once we've extracted all that data, we then cleanse it, we match and join it together. We then validate it to confirm that information is correct and up to date. And then on an ongoing basis, we regularly refresh it. So our business data and our API is updated on a daily basis, but we also provide hosted data where you can go in and start running models and creating deeper insights. And the information is served up in a way that you can query it directly on our database, or you can extract it to download it and cascade it across your organization. Or if you want the freshest and fastest and the easiest way of integrating, then you could just pull it directly from our API, which is updated on a daily basis. So in terms of why would you use Doorda instead of doing it yourself? Well, 1,000 data sources would dictate that it's unlikely you'd want to go to all 1,000 of them public data sources. It's also unlikely you'd be able to have the skills in-house to validate that and also apply your own internal integrity checks for a wide-scale project. We tend to be faster because we actually monitor these data sets, and it's our job to provide the data. We are agnostic in the type of data we get, so we will cover property, business, geodemographics. That could include universal credits, or could include property prices, or could include a list of directors. We're adaptive to changes within the data, so we make sure the schemas don't change where possible, and we inform you if they do. We've spent many years developing matching technology, so we join the data correctly and in the right way. And we also keep a historical record of all the data that's been processed, so you can look back in time. And the next slide, we've grouped our data offering into 3 distinct products. We've got Doorda Biz, which covers just over 12 million companies, 32 million directors. We've pulled out the archive data behind all this, so we actually contain more information than the company's house register and API, because we store the historical data, which they don't necessarily return back if a company's being delisted. We also append this data to things such as public procurement. So approximately 240 billion of spend data in the UK is made by the government, which has to go through an open process. So we take that data and join it together. In the current crisis, we estimate that would increase quite dramatically, but in an average year, the government would account for 30 to 40% of all spend by GDP within the UK. So it's quite a large quantity of data coming through it. And all the addresses in here, we connect back through to Doorda Property, so you can then cross-reference a company connected to an individual address. So on the next slide, we'll see that we've got Doorda Stats. Doorda Stats is geodemographic by location. So this allows you to look at the educational outcomes in a local area. You can see the occupations of individuals. You can see employment levels, average property prices. And the idea behind this is you could then build up a risk profile. So if you're an insurance company, you could be looking at, is it a high or low income area? If you're a marketing company, you could be looking at the spend in each area to see if it's worth targeting new services or solutions into them. And all this data here will connect onto a postcode should you wish, because it does join onto a postcode. You can then join this onto our Doorda Property solution. And this contains all UK addresses. So there's approximately 36 million addresses in the UK, of which 2.2 million are commercial. We append additional information onto these addresses. So for domestic, for example, you could look at the price paid for a property based on the post office reference number, as well as the number of times it's been sold. You can look at the internals, which is gathered from EPC data. So you can see the size of an address, you can see what it's made of. You can also look at commercial occupants and also the internals of commercial addresses. And again, all this data is refreshed automatically in the background, and you can access it via the API or via the hosted solution itself. And we have quite complex data matching algorithms which ensure the integrity of the data and ensure that it's joined up correctly. So back to you, Alejandra.
So thank you, Clifford. So all of this sounds super interesting. I'm sure you all want to know more. But now I want you to meet CARTO Data Observatory. So we have, from Doorda and CARTO, we have crafted a specific offering that you can get and analyze straight from CARTO. So in CARTO Data Observatory, you can get all of this data from the Data Observatory for the UK. But we will be focusing in 2 of these verticals. That is what Doorda is offering through the CARTO platform. So in the demographics section, you can find from social demographics, health, which is very important in the current situation, occupation, crime, households income, household spend, and in the housing vertical, you can find real estate, property, and commercial locations. And for both verticals, you can find the spatial, which are geometries into which you can cross this data and make the spatial analysis. So I will let Clifford to talk a little bit more in detail about those.
So as with the three previous data products that we showed you, what we've worked with in conjunction with CARTO to break these down into more consumable, easier packages, each of which are instantly consumable via the CARTO Data Observatory. So in this case, we've just broken these down to make them easier to create insights from whatever perspective you want to take on it. So our social demographics is information on individuals or groups of people living in an area, including benefit claimants. So that would include universal credit and pension credits. Our health data set contains information on mortality, average age of death, obesity levels, propensity to smoke, but also we built something up around COVID-19, which offers insights into our estimated infection rates at a local area, and we'll go into that in a bit more detail later. Occupations is about the type of jobs people have. Households is about the number of people in a house, but also how densely packed a particular house would be. We have information on household incomes. This gives you income before, during, and after benefit, based on a decile between 1 and 10, with the highest income households and the lowest income. We've also got the household spend, which is taken from ONS, who release information on average, what each household each week is spending in a certain category. So how much people would spend on cigarettes, for example, or how much they would spend on health services or additional educational outcomes. We've also got crime, which is 50 million crimes and counting, along with their outcomes. We've mapped all these to a postcode level, which makes it very easy to join on to any other data sets you may have, or even just to visualize within CARTO itself. Real estate will give you property prices, bands based on the local area again, and also the rental values for a typical property, be it 2-3 bedroom property as gathered by local authorities. Property is individual address level information, which includes the actual sale prices and also property characteristics as contained within the EPC inspections. We've got our commercial locations, which would include the occupant name. So if it's a WH Smith's, for example, we would map that back to the company number. And that would also tell you what the hygiene inspection outcome is based on the scores on the doors, which I'm sure you've all seen, which is getting an awful lot of traffic at the moment for obvious reasons, and also whether they've got a gambling license. And then our spatial data is the polygons. So this is uniquely processed in a WKT format, which means you're able to pull out individual postcodes if you just want to create a polygon for that, or you could pull out an entire area. So in our case, we serve the data up as an OA or LSOA, which makes it easier to analyze and compare local regions. Built within each package is a regular refresh. We've standardized all the data. So for those of you who may not be aware, the UK has administrative areas which are based on output areas, which are typically roughly 400 people, or LSOAs, which tend to contain upwards of about 12 to 1600 people. This would allow you to compare a small area in Newcastle on Tyne with an area in St Ives and Cornwall, for example, knowing that they're roughly the same size. It means you can do direct comparisons on the wealth of the area, the educational outcomes, but it's also got geodemographic classifications on the type of people who live in a certain area, which again gives you more insights. And then you could also group these up into higher levels. So you could group wards together as in electoral wards, or you could group in a local authority if you wanted to compare Hackney with Hounslow. And we've also got the health authorities in there as well. And contained within, at the OA level again itself, is population estimates from the original census, or the most recent census, which was 2011, and also more recent population releases, which came out, I think it was last year, which they do on a biannual basis. So you can see changes in areas as well, which is extremely useful for marketing purposes and analysing the data.
So we have a new poll. we want to know, so in the current situation, what kind of data do you consider key for your business? Please answer this question in the space allowed in your screen. So here we have the results. So most of you think that the key data for your business would be social demographics. The second would be financial. Third would be other data. Fourth would be health data. And then last, housing or property. Thank you for your answers. This is very interesting for us to keep with the webinar. So from CARTO, we, as an example of the analysis we have developed with the Doorda data, here you can see an example of an analysis that we undertook with the real estate package. So this is how the property price has evolved in London from 1995 to until 2013. So as you can see, prices have gone up with the time. And following the same analysis and with the same data, we have also discovered that in the UK, while income has traditionally been one of the biggest drivers of property sales in recent years, buying properties beyond the reach of most locals. This is due in large part to foreign speculators and landlords driving up prices, while salaries have not increased rapidly enough to keep up with the increase in property prices. So the divergence is probably the largest in the London area, of course, which is the area you can see in the map shown. So most people currently are able to get a mortgage 5 times their net annual income. In this area, the property price to mortgage ratio is consistently above 1, which I think is a very useful insight. So after these examples, we will get to the current situation, to the COVID-19 pandemic. So I took this quote from Christine Lagarde, who said, "All hands should be on deck," which is what we're doing here. So it is very important for us to analyze what's happening and predict what could happen next, to try to adapt as much as possible to the next normal situation, or the way that things will be after this pandemic. We performed an analysis in the UK to see how the infection rate was distributed through the country. So we can see that the areas, the darker areas, is where the higher infection rate exists. That is obviously attributed that social distancing measures are more difficult to follow in densely populated areas, whether, of course, in countryside areas or less populated cities, you will find lower rates. Can you see other interesting correlations? We will look at that. So the left map is the one we saw previously, so it's the infection rate. The map in the center is the mortality risk index. So you can see that in the areas where the infection rate is higher, so the darker areas, the mortality risk index is also the highest. That is due to that older people live in those areas, and those people live longer. And we all know that COVID-19 infection rate is related with age. On the right, we have a wealth risk index, and where wealth risk is the highest, that means the area has a big population of poorer people. So that is also correlated to infection rate. Here we can find a box plot, so fighting against an unknown enemy, which is COVID-19. it is important to understand the correlations between the estimates, infection rate, and key demographics and socioeconomic variables. So here we have 4 categories, which is age and household, mortality and comorbidity, economic resilience, and engagement. So we have seen previously that there seems to be a correlation with the mortality and wealth risk. Looking at this box plots of infection rate versus other indexes, we also note, for example, a dependence of the infection rate on comorbidities risk, smokers, the people that smoke and that have higher obesity rates, and on overcrowding as well. So the more people live in the same rooms or in the same house, the higher the risk. Also, the age dependence of the infection rate, with a rate decreasing with age, might instead be explained by how the infection rate has been computed, accounting for higher infection rate in younger individuals to shift the observed mortality rate in the UK to the Health Organization estimate. So to follow with the analysis, here is consumer spending habits. So as we saw before, highest infection rate is also related to the poorest areas. So that's highly correlated with a decrease of the spending, of course. So it's interesting to see how in the areas with the highest infection rates, there's a decrease in the spend in alcohol, like wine and fortified wines, and also in medicine prescriptions and healthcare products. So of course, as COVID-19 takes longer to be among us, the poorest areas have it harder to get income, and of course that is highly correlated with the amount they spend in many things, not only alcohol, which is we know it's recommended to have a healthy lifestyle, and of course that it also correlated with spend in medicine prescriptions and healthcare products, because of course it's harder for these people to purchase, even though it's good for them.
So just following on from that, we do have 2 packages on offer, because we're aware of the fact that COVID is obviously quite an insidious disease, which is stalking all our lives at the moment. So what we're trying to do is the first release of our COVID-19 infection rate model, we're opening up a non-commercial license use, which will be free to download directly from CARTO, but also from our website if you need the polygons or anything else additional to it. Within that would allow you to model wards, as in the electoral wards, the parliamentary constituencies, and also the relevant CCGs. So CCGs are very much based in England, but each nation within the UK has its own health boards, so you can group the data based on that. And within that package, you'll also see the risk indexes for obesity, morbidity, smoking propensity, and so on. And we intend to push that through as a weekly update, which will be available via CARTO and also via the website as well. What we're also keen to get is feedback from experts such as yourselves on what data set you think we could be adding to it and how we could actually flex the model to make it a bit more accurate. Obviously, in the coming weeks and months, we expect COVID to be less relevant within the news, hopefully, as the weather improves and the infection rate decreases. However, until there's a proper treatment in place, then we fully expect that come the winter that there'll be an uptick in the interest against this again. So over the coming months, the more accurate we can make this, the better it's going to be for everyone involved with it. On top of that, we also have a full version, commercial version of the package, which allows you to build your own models using the data. So the data within the open package, the commercial package, is at an OA level. OA is an output area. There's approximately 112,000, I think, just across the whole of the UK. So it's a much, much lower area. And they build within the LSOA. So you can build up your own models by joining this against your own data, which could be useful for exit outcomes, or if you're working within retail, what the likely impact is going to be if they introduce other lockdowns. And that comes with weekly updates. That also includes the obesity, smoking, life expectancy, and we've broken all them down by gender and age band down to the OA level, so it's extremely detailed. And we've also rolled in the COVID infection scores that we've created within our model. And that will also be available in CARTO as well. And within the actual package in CARTO itself, so you can see here some of the examples. So the ward is the electoral ward, PC is the parliamentary constituency, and in here we've just scored it from 0 to 100 on the risk index score behind this. So there's nothing stopping people yourselves getting stuck into this and creating your own scores and appending your own data on top of this. In terms of the use cases for this type of data, so certainly within the financial services, it's quite useful across all the products that we've got on offer within the CARTO Data Observatory for business credit assessment. Certainly if you're in a retail unit and there's quite a high infection rate, then it's going to have more of an impact on your business. There's also wider marketing opportunities as we exit the lockdown to start targeting people, as we don't expect the economy to grind to a standstill. We all need to move forward as a nation as a whole. Also for logistics, in terms of if you want to do some address matching or identify additional attributes around properties. For insurance, we have people using it for form filling and under assessing underwriting risk. Marketing, certainly if you've got data within CARTO already and you append wealth information or social demographic data, that would certainly enhance your model quite substantially, certainly around the segmentation. And also for the users of this data, it tends to fall into business analysts who are trying to find opportunities or assessing the risk. Data scientists will save a lot of time by utilizing the data. It's all pre-packaged and ready to go. And data managers would also find it quite useful for upgrading their own internal data structures, as all the legalities behind it have been dealt with by Doorda, and you can cascade that across your organization to suit.
Thank you, Clifford. So to end up this webinar, we want to finish with a poll, of course. So we want to know if you consider purchasing data to fight or predict scenarios post COVID-19 and help adapt your business or company. Please answer in the space available in your screen. So available answers are yes, no, never thought about it, or never found the right data or the data I'm looking for. So 30% of you consider that they will purchase data. 30% consider that they won't be purchasing data. 25% never thought about it. We hope this webinar will make you change your mind. And 15% never found the right data or the data I am looking for. So thank you for these answers. As you have seen, Doorda and CARTO offer a wide range of data. And we really hope this data is interesting for you and the analysis you will undertake in the future. So thank you for listening. If you have any questions, we will have another 5 to 10 minutes to answer your questions. Clifford, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. So do you want me to pick this one up regarding the source of the COVID data?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the data is sourced. One of the biggest issues with establishing any model is the non-standardization of the data. For obvious reasons, as the crisis hit, government was a bit caught off guard, so to speak, and the release of data has certainly shown that left, right and centre. So the initial data releases were coming out on a daily basis, were coming out at a local authority level, and was offering more insights than we're actually getting now. We've since changed the model to weekly updates at local authority, but daily updates for death and infection rates, which makes it very difficult to build any model when the data keeps on changing, as I'm sure we all understand as data people. The current data sources are coming from Public Health England. We've also got data coming from the Welsh Health Authority, along with Scotland and with Northern Ireland. The devolved nature of health services in the UK mean that data will always be released by the internal nations of the UK, and they will vary, unfortunately, which is why we were quite determined to build a model where possible and to try to smooth out the roughness of the data and present it in a way that makes it a lot more consumable. But the data is all taken from public data sources.
So we thank you for listening, and we hope to see you in the next webinars.